Well, g'day, George Christensen here, and sorry for the slight delay, ladies and gentlemen. We've got over 2,500 people that have joined the live stream here. I'm dialing to you in from home, so don't mind the background, and you probably even might hear from my wife and daughter who are just over there. She's attempting to be fed, but I had to take my little girl to the doctors, and I'm a bit delayed. But we've got waiting in the wings. AFL solicitors Tony Nikolic. Tony and AFL solicitors have been really a tower of strength in the legal fraternity when it comes to fighting no jab, no job provisions. And I know that that's what a lot of people are looking to find out, where they stand legally regarding no jab, no job provisions. We're also going to be hearing from Jack McGuire from what's called Red Union. They run a variety of different union or industrial associations, from the Nursing Professionals Association of Queensland through to a newly formed Medical Practitioners Association of Australia. So we'll get to talk to Jack in a while. But firstly, I'm going to bring Tony in on the stream. Tony, how you going, mate?
Mate, g'day. How are you? Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's pretty hectic at the moment.
I bet, and thank you very much for joining us. Look, mate, we'll jump right to the chase. There's a lot of people who are contacting me, no doubt contacting you, wondering where they stand legally if their employer is forcing upon them some no jab, no job policy, whether that's something that the employer's doing off their own bat or whether it is being forced upon them by government. Can you give us a brief sort of overview of the law in this regards, mate?
Well, certainly, I'm just out at the moment, so I'll be flying by the seat of my pants here. But what we essentially have is a confusing array of laws all around Australia. What we are hearing is that the government's imposing what we call mandates. They may call them whatever they want, but that's what they are, and employers are just running with them. Indicating to their workers that they need to be jabbed, otherwise they don't have a job. But then when we go to the Fair Work Australia website, they say things such as employers and employees are encouraged to work together, right? And what we're essentially seeing here is on what basis are they actually saying that? Because I think you yourself, George, and myself essentially would be, and I don't know what calls you're getting, but I certainly know the calls I'm getting is that if I'm not jabbed by a certain amount of time, I don't have a job. That being said, I can't see where someone is being encouraged to work together. There is no encouragement. The only encouragement really, and it's not encouragement, it's actual coercion, that if you don't get this jab, you don't work here. So there are more issues here that go a little bit deeper. They cut very deep into this, and we're seeing people actually getting the sack. Okay, that's what's happening. And if they're not getting the sack, they're being told that if you don't get the jab, you're either going to be stood down, and being stood down without pay, and being stood down until you meet certain. Well, I don't know, George. It doesn't sound like anyone's being encouraged here other than coerced.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks, Tony, for that. Mate, I hear that you have some sort of form that people can download to present to their employers, a form letter of some description. Can you tell us a bit about that and where people can go to access that form?
Yeah, we've got a number of forms both on our Telegram, which is t.me/AFL solicitors. That's the Telegram. And obviously we've got aflsolicitors.com.au. There are a number of letters and templates that we've constructed over time, and they're available for the community to download and have a look at. Obviously you tailor it, you put your own address, and you can edit it yourself. I think a couple of important points that I would like to make, especially up there in Queensland, the Health and Safety Act up there, actually section 84. I'll just read from it really quick. A worker may cease or refuse to carry out work if the worker has a reasonable concern that to carry out the work would expose the worker to a serious risk of work health and safety emanating from an immediate or imminent exposure to a hazard. Okay. Now, I'm very confident in the research I'm seeing, and take it for whatever it is. Even if you go to the TGA website, the short period of time that these vaccines have been in distribution in Australia, which is about 222 days, we've had well over 57,000 adverse reactions. What we then did is we compared that to the adverse reactions that have come from all the other drugs that they're pretty well banning, okay, saying that you can't use this drug, this drug, this drug to treat it or to prevent it. I'm not going to name them, but those drugs over
Thank you, because I'll get my video taken off Facebook if I do.
I won't do that. But what essentially is there is that over 4,217 days, they have been in circulation, and the highest adverse rate has been 2,284, I believe. So in 222 days, we've had 57,000 adverse reactions, okay, known to these jabs, and all the other drugs together, with the highest being 2,284, which have been out for decades, mind you, over 4,217 days. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does, because that's just plain and simple straight off the TGA website.
Yeah. Mate, there's a lot of people asking questions. I mean, we're getting smashed here, almost up to 4,000 people on this live stream throughout the different platforms. They are asking about the court cases and whether the changes that have been announced by, firstly, when's it on, what's it about, and all the rest of it, and whether the changes made to New South Wales law or regulation today really negate the need for that court case. So I'll throw over to you and you can talk a little bit about that court case, mate.
Well, I've been in the throes of many cases.
Oh, we've just lost you, Tony. You've gone on mute, mate.
Hello. Can you see me?
Yep, I can see you. You're back. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So what's happened is I'm in a number of cases. With the mandatory one, that's obviously going on the 30th and the 1st. Obviously, there's a lot of back and fro. Everyone's into it. Where do we stand there? Well, all our evidence is in. We're just finalising where we're going with it. What's very encouraging, George, is that other law firms have followed our lead, and I'm very encouraged with that. I think the more the better, because everyone's going to bring their own flavour to it, and it's not necessarily a case of winning, losing, or whatever. It's about each of us learning from something and working together, because ultimately, if you succeed, I succeed. If I succeed, you succeed. And we go along those lines, right? So where we're heading here is the evidence is in. We're getting ready for the final throws. And then obviously the other firms are going to come in behind us. We've got serious concerns with the evidence that we've got from our experts. I won't relay that here, but there are legitimate concerns, George, and I think everyone's concerns out there are quite legitimate.
Mate, just a question. Someone's asked, there's a lot of questions going on. I can't keep up with the amount of questions here, but what about aged care? So I want to ask specifically about that. What about aged care? It seemed to me from the outset that they've just got that stitched up, and you know, if you didn't take the vaccine, well, you can no longer work there. But I got a feeling you think a bit differently about that in terms of the law. So what about aged care? What about health? What about police forces, where these directives seem to be a little bit different because it's government control bodies, and even the Defence Force, mate. I'm not sure what they're doing there, but what about all these government employment agencies? What leg do people have to stand on in the law there to say, I don't want to take it, and I also don't want to lose my job?
Well, they're a little bit different to, say, a minister giving a direction, right, as opposed to, say, a police commissioner or fire commissioner or something like that. They're slightly different, where they would be more of a Fair Work Australia type case, where that's where you'd sort of take cases down that route and really go after it, to be quite candid with you. I think, like I said, the evidence coming out from around the world is overwhelming. I don't know how we can sustain this issue of well, they're rare. Well, how many rare things do you want, and which rare one do you want? Because you don't know what you're going to get. And secondly, I think the other point is it doesn't stop you from getting it, doesn't stop you from transmitting it. There may be some research in terms of it may slightly reduce some of the severity, but I think the essence here is, didn't they say we're locking down to control it? So if we're locking down to control it and it doesn't stop you from spreading it, that's the jab, then essentially what we're doing is we're getting jabbed and taking that into the very vulnerable sectors they're trying to stop us from taking. Okay, and that's something that a lot of people aren't looking at. When it comes to the aged care sector and the healthcare sector, they are very, very, very vulnerable sectors where we're jabbing them and telling them to go in there. That there, to me, is alarming. So yeah, I think there are a lot of questions that need to be asked here.
And the the flip side.
And we've got the construction workers.
Construction. So you're onto that. You're taking that one to the courts as we speak. Is that
right?
Well,
that's essentially a part of our claim. Yeah, that's essentially a part of our claim. Sorry, George. A part of our claim are construction workers, healthcare. Obviously, there's the tangent of teachers, aged care. It's happening everywhere, and we're getting police officers. Why not? If you're going to do something like this, go for the highest risk group. And the highest risk group, according to the international epidemiological studies, the highest risk group is about 99.54 or 45% survivability rate, and that's if you've got comorbidities, and that's at 80 plus. And every life is absolutely worth something. Don't we shall not diminish that whatsoever. But I think what we need to do is start to manage who is the highest at risk, and people who are healthy and young, like especially the kids, they're an almost exponential survivability rate. It's almost like they get nothing. Okay, it's almost nothing to a kid.
Yeah,
and it's almost nothing to a healthy person.
The data certainly says that. So, mate, look, the bottom line here, and I'll let you go in a few minutes. But the bottom line is, if someone is facing a no jab, no job request or demand from their employer, what should they do right now? I'll tell you what I've told people. I've told people, one, be aware of what's on Fair Work, and I've got the information running across the bottom of the screen at the moment, highly good information, but Fair Work, you need to go to that, coronavirus.fairwork.gov.au, I think. And I've told them they need to get in contact with their union. And we're going to be talking to someone who runs a number of unions in a minute that I want to introduce you to, Tony, before you go. And finally, I've said to people to make sure you contact your local MP as well, to tell them how aggrieved you feel about this. But I feel at the end, it's really going to come down to something's going to have to happen legally. Do you think that's the case?
I actually think something needs to happen in society. There needs to be a massive transformation. People need to get up and exercise their rights. They have rights. The law, as you can see, there's been many cases that have gone before the courts, and unfortunately, the second someone says COVID, no one wants to upset a minister. And so I think what we need to do is get the people, the community they've got rights, and they need to exercise those rights. And if you're going to be sacked or something,
You just lost you, Tony. Yeah, again, the sound went off, mate.
Yeah.
You're back. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Yep. So if people are saying you're going to get sacked, or you don't have a job here, or whatever may be the case, then you need to start looking at your options, and people really need to stand together. And when you stand together, it's one sardine is nothing, but when you put 2 million sardines together, that sardine can pretty well swallow a lot of things. Okay, so
Yeah.
I think you need, and then that essentially, if you have a look at unions and things like that's what they should be there. But unfortunately, and I'm not being critical of anyone, but or anything, but I think we do need that cohesive network there. And I think we all need to work together, and people need to stand together as one. You've got aged care, you've got police, you've got fire, you've got all this. Don't look at them in a social categorisation context. Think of them as fellow Australians.
Yep.
Who are being subjugated with and pressured into certain areas. That's what we need to think of.
All right. Well, look, Tony, I've just introduced Jack McGuire, and for all of the viewers out there, Jack runs Red Union, which runs a number of different unions. I think that offline I need to connect you two together, because this group, as I said, runs a number of unions, and they're very interested in taking up the cause for their workers. And Jack, just do a quick sort of run through of the unions that you have for Tony and also for the viewers.
Sure. Yes. Thanks for having me on, George. So we started about 6 or 7 years ago, just as the Nurses Professional Association of Queensland. We've now got almost 9,000 members in the nurse union. Over the weekend, we were being inundated by nurses in Victoria and in New South Wales because their unions were not supporting them, and they wanted somewhere to go. So we've just rolled out the Nurses Professional Association of Queensland, which is a nurses union up in Queensland nationally. So that's now the Nurses Professional Association of Australia. And people can go and see all the unions that we have on redunion.com.au. We've got a teachers union up in Queensland here with, it started out just over 500 members, and now that has also been taken nationally. We have a drivers union, and just recently, as of last week, we were approached by a group of doctors who wanted to start up the Australian Medical Professionals Society as an alternative to the AMA, because the AMA is on record now as saying they want the jab mandated for every person in the country, and there are some doctors who totally disagree with that in Australia, and they have as a core role, they want to see the return to the primacy of that doctor-patient relationship and to remove government from that. I know you were talking about a certain medication before that the TGA had some opinions on. I think it's absolutely outrageous what they've done. The whole board should be sacked and reconstituted. They've the three reasons that they gave in their press release was they're worried about supply. Well, India has hundreds of kilos of this thing being produced every day, so it'd be a supply issue for about a week. They said they were worried that people would be bulletproof. They wouldn't be going and getting the vaccine. They wouldn't be going and getting tested. Well, that's not a reason. I think that's outrageous. And where do they base that off? And then they were saying they're worried about people taking social media doses. Well, if you're going to get if you want people to not take social media doses, why don't you get it prescribed by a doctor?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a number of actions that we're sort of taking as well, and one of them, funnily enough, was informed by Tony and his team at AFL Solicitors. So I'd love to chat offline to you, Tony.
All right, and it looks like you've dropped out, Tony. But look, mate, I don't know if you can still hear me. Anyway, we've got the swirling sort of circle of death there, but Tony's gone. But look, that's great. We've got most of what we wanted to get from Tony, and he's been very generous with his time, giving us that. But Jack, I'm going to ask you again, trying to impart information onto our listeners now. Your unions, let's go through them again. You've got the Nursing Professionals Association of Queensland, the Teaching Professionals Association of Queensland. You've got the new, sorry, it's my daughter interjecting there. You've got the new nationwide union for medical practitioners. What's it called again?
The Australian Medical Professional Society, AMPS.
AMPS, Australian Medical Professional Society.
Yep.
we've also got you've got a one for drivers, is that right?
Yep,
Transport
Professional Drivers Association of Australia, so an alternative to the RBTU and the TWU.
And there's some, perhaps, probably letting a cat out of the bag is perhaps some talk about a new police union in the offing.
Yes, I'm actually speaking to a group of police officers, some from Victoria, some from New South Wales, and a couple of guys up here in Queensland tonight at 7:30 about the prospects of setting up an alternative police union. They're pretty upset. There's a lot of, and I think the fellow who might end up running it, he's actually been double vaxxed. He was the first person to go out and get it when AstraZeneca came in. Then they started talking about blood clots, and then they started making it, mandatory for all his mates. And he wanted to stand up and thought it was pretty, untoward that the commissioner could just force his colleagues into getting it or leaving the job. So, he wants to take a stand.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask you similar sort of questions because Tony's a legal expert. You're an expert, I guess, in IR. If I'm in one of the professions that you've got covered, nurses, teachers, principally those are government jobs, right? And I'd say it's probably a little bit different in the police field because they've been given commissioner's directive or something like that. But if you're in a government job and you're told by your employer you have to be vaccinated to continue your employment, what should the worker do? What are you advising your members right now?
There's some information on our website. So if you go to redunion.com.au and then visit one of our websites, probably the Nurses Professional Association of Australia or the Australian Medical Professional Society is probably the best one to go to. I should mention too that AMPS, that is a union run by doctors, but it's the doctors specifically said they wanted to open it up to be broader than just doctors and bring on affiliates, so wardies and other people in the hospital as well to try and protect them. But if you go to that website, on there, I think it'll have a little update banner that says important update about workplace health and safety concerns. The first couple of steps are on there for anyone that wants to protect their position legally, and we suggest that people do that. The first step is essentially emailing your line manager and requesting a risk assessment. So under workplace health and safety legislation, they have a duty to consult with workers at a PCBU level. Now, PCBU is, a person conducting a business or undertaking. So that's essentially at a ward level. A ward level or a police station level, it needs to be that granular. So they need to conduct a risk assessment and consult in that process. The risk assessment must outline the impact of COVID-19 on the workforce and how they're going to mitigate that risk. And in that risk mitigation, they will have then also risk assessed vaccination and these COVID jabs. What we're finding is that process has not happened in almost any of these sectors that we've explored. So I would suggest that people should send that off and put some pressure on their employers because they have legislative obligations to tick those boxes and they haven't been ticked. And there are, sometimes there are penalties if they don't follow those. So all we're asking for though, for employers, and in this case it's Queensland Health is the most pressing one coming up at the end of this week. All we want is for our members to be consulted so that they can see what the risk profile is, because the employer won't even tell them what the risk profile is of these vaccines. Now, there's a different risk profile for, someone my age and young to someone who's perhaps 60 and still working. So all that needs to be taken into consideration. They also need to assess whether if there's 99% of people vaccinated in a workplace and there's one person who hasn't been vaccinated, well, that has a different risk profile to say only 20% being vaccinated, and they must rationally assess risk. And the other important thing in the hierarchy that they have of trying to reduce risk, the top is engineering out the risk. So this vaccine isn't that, and it doesn't do that because it doesn't totally remove the risk, because people can still get COVID-19 and they can still transmit COVID-19. So it isn't totally removing it from the workplace. So in that regard, and if you listen to what they're saying, I guess the current school of thought in the public consensus is that it reduces your symptoms and it, might save your life, or you don't go to hospital as much. So in that regard, I guess it's more like wearing a hard hat on a work site. You get hit on the head with a hammer, you get a laceration, it'll hurt. If you get hit on a hammer while you're wearing a helmet, it'll still hurt, but you won't get the laceration. So it just sort of mitigates the symptoms a little bit. So if that is the case, and these vaccines are more like PPE, well, what alternative PPE measures are there? And perhaps there's another step that could be taken, such as which would actually be engineering it out, which would be that rapid antigen testing. So people, before they go into any of these facilities, take the rapid antigen testing and away you go. There's also plenty of common law on this. I think there's a Supreme Court judge recently, don't ask me the case, said that if you come into my court and say that you can't make a safe workplace due to costs, I wouldn't run that argument. So there are plenty of significant sort of varying levels of PPE, and there'd be any number of PPE options available that would be even more effective than even vaccination.
Yeah, okay. I notice, well, firstly, for you, Jack, a few people are asking about if they wanted to get involved. I saw one comment about a police union, if they wanted to get involved in that. Who do they contact if they want to get involved? I guess in one of your existing unions, if they're in Queensland as a nurse, if they're a nurse or a doctor or something else elsewhere, I guess they can get involved in the Medical Professionals Society. The other unions. It's redunion.com.au. And it's got the list of all your unions there, right?
That's right.
Redunion.com.au is in.
It'll have a list of all the unions there. Yes, the colour red. And I will say too, because we've been around for a little while now, and we're much cheaper than a lot of the other unions. I say we fight a lot harder. I mean, this issue, for instance, a lot of the unions have just vacated the field, which I find pretty disappointing. In fact, I think even the Queensland Police Union went so far as to put a memo out saying they'll legally back any vaccinated officer that doesn't want to work with an unvaccinated officer, and it's just really divisive. One of the other important, I guess, features of our
shocking.
Yeah, madness. One of the things that is a distinguishing feature in our unions too is that in the constitutions of all our different unions is the prohibition to support political parties either financially or via in-kind support. So we have no, we aren't joined at the hip with anyone. We don't have to try and, if we see a shin that needs to be kicked, we'll kick it, essentially.
Yeah, good. Well, there's a lot of them that need to be kicked at the moment, mate. Just off unions for a second, I see a few people that have been asking about the Constitution, and I don't know off the top of my head the section about medical conscription. So, you might actually have some knowledge of this because of the medical field, but my understanding of it is that, for one, it's a doctor that would need to run such a case, and they would need to prove that there has been medical conscription. And the unfortunate thing about the Constitution is that a lot of it comes up to interpretation. And so, legal opinions are pretty much like noses. Everyone's got one, therein the problem lies. So it's not as clear cut as all of that, but it could be. It's an avenue for a future lawyer to take on, a complaint against a worker that's being required to have the jab, because the Constitution says that medical conscription doesn't belong in this country. But it's a matter of making sure that the legal links are there, and so that's a matter for the courts. It's not something that I can do anything about, or you can do anything about. It's really going to take people like Tony Nikolic and the other lawyers. Mate, we do have barristers that are looking at that at the moment. We're also separately doing a judicial review, and hoping to take
some injunctive relief, but we're waiting until unfortunately, our legal team believe it's better to wait until the 1st after the deadline to take injunctive relief as opposed to preemptive injunctive relief. And I'll unfortunately take their advice on that one. But we're also, trying to apply some pressure through other means. We are organising a silent vigil. I believe there's some action being taken up in Cairns, and there's also some action being taken in Brisbane, where nurses will be standing out the front of their hospitals, because this is the just absolutely amazing part of this, which I still don't understand. I mean, we've been hearing reports that there's 600 or 700 nurses that are willing to walk off the job in Gold Coast University Hospital. Queensland Health have no idea who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been vaccinated now, because that deadline isn't until the 30th. And so they're basically expecting nurse unit managers to turn around from the 30th to the 1st, potentially cut out 50% of their workforce. And George, you may be interested in some of these surveys we did. So we did a survey of 2,000 nurses. I think this is the largest survey that's been done of nurses. Out of the 2,000 nurses, and keep in mind this will be somewhat indicative, but even if it's not, and it's just 2,000 nurses. So of 2,000 nurses, there are still 1,300 that hadn't got the jab. So if you took that in isolation and you just said 1,300 nurses were leaving Queensland Health, that would have catastrophic consequences. I'm hearing from nurses that there are a lot more nurses going on sick leave at the moment, either being burnt out, or they are even saying that a lot of them have been vaccinated and they're suffering an increased rate of illness. Out of that, also those who have been vaccinated. 602 out of the 2,000 said they were coerced into getting the vaccine. So there really is only a very slim group of people who were vaccinated by choice and willing to. So I don't understand why the Queensland Nurses Union haven't entered into the fray on this one. It just boggles my mind. But so back to our action that we're taking. So if the hospital doesn't, the hospital system doesn't collapse, which it seems like it's in great imminent risk of happening, we will have all of our nurses will be ready, willing, and able to work. They want to work. They want to save lives. They love caring for people. That's in their DNA. That's what nurses do. They'll be standing out of the front of the hospital on the 1st of October, saying that they're ready, willing, and able to work. Inside, they're probably going to be shutting wards because there will not be enough staff to keep them open. There's going to be a huge amount of pressure on these hospital executives to just simply let them walk through the door and help the people inside that need helping. After that, we'll be walking from those hospitals down to the CBD, and we'll be holding a candlelit vigil. So it'll be interesting to see where all this ends up. Interesting in a very sad way, because it's not necessary. And this is a total own goal by Queensland Health. Oops, sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry, George.
I just made the fatal error. You think after all this time on Zoom we'd know to take ourselves off mute, but I didn't. Mate, teachers. There's been a few questions about teachers, and I see some comment about Australian Education United. I'm not sure what that is. It might just be a ad hoc group of people. It might be a formal association. I don't know if you have any intel on that, but you've got a Teachers Professionals Association. What about those guys? And the other question to feed into that, not just about the teachers, but a lot of your coverage is in Queensland. There's people asking, well, what if I'm not in Queensland? What about New South Wales? What about Victoria? Can Red Union help, or what should these people do?
Yes, absolutely. That was the intention of rolling up from the Nurses Professional Association of Queensland to the Nurses Professional Association of Australia, and the Teachers Professional Association of Queensland to the Teachers Professional Association of Australia. I guess absolutely we would fight for anyone who would be for teachers, for example, who didn't want to be who had concerns about workplace health and safety. That's because as it is, that hasn't been done anywhere yet either. So it's the mind boggles. I mean, if the Queensland government can't hold themselves to their own legislative standards that they set, what help is there for the rest of society? So, yes, we'll be taking on those matters. Absolutely. We'll be looking at judicial reviews in Queensland, but also advancing individual cases interstate if people want to join us. And as I think I might have been getting to before, unionism is kind of like insurance. It's very hard to get insurance for your house while your kitchen's on fire. But in this case, our executive, various executive of the various unions have decided that this issue is too important. It has been heartbreaking hearing some of these nurses who have been with other unions and they haven't been given that protection. So we are straining our resources to try and bring those people on. And now I think we usually grow at about 15 members a day, George. We're growing at well over 120 members a day just on the dashboard behind me. So we are absolutely experiencing some growing pains, but it's good in that we're able to help more and more people as they come on board. I just had another survey up here that I was going to mention too about police, because there was a group of 200 police that approached us in Queensland because they weren't happy with what the police union had done. But I asked them a question, polled 200 police and said, are there other policing areas that have been neglected? And everyone came back, absolutely major crimes been put on the back burner. They said even just if you look at the road tolls, there's been a spike over this year, even though we've had lockdowns and less people on the road, where they used to be, say, in Ipswich Logan area, 6 patrol cars on the road, there's only 1, maybe 2, because they were deployed to the border. And there's another really horrific example here. Someone says anecdotally, yes, I've had to tell a rape victim 3 times that her matter is being delayed because forensic analysis couldn't be done due to hotel quarantine deployment and airport deployments, which is just disgusting. So no wonder these cops are outraged, because they get into the police force to try and solve crime and stop bad things happening, and here they are just becoming, the tool of the public health officials.
Yeah. How sad. Look, I see a couple of people, just going back to something, a couple of people disputed me saying the Constitution's not open to interpretation. Look, I agree with you. It shouldn't be. People have talked about the annotated Constitution. The problem is the High Court is the one that adjudicates on what the Constitution says. So it's not George Christensen, it's the High Court. So if you've got an issue with legal interpretations and how they're able to use certain words to wriggle through what we all think the Constitution says, so I'd suggest you take it up with the High Court. And that's what's frustrating about all of this, is that I am in a position of power, but I find that I don't have my hands on any levers that I can pull that can absolutely assist someone. The only way I can assist people is by connecting them to people like yourself, Jack, and people like Tony Nikolic. And I understand he's going to set up a website very soon, which has quite a number of different legal firms on it that are helping people with their issues in this regard. I want to, if I can make the tech work, mate, so just give me a second here. I want to throw to now, wonders of technology. I'm going to probably not know how to do this. What I want to do is try and bring up a web page on my screen, and just bear with me, mate. I'm going to get it up. There we go. So people can see that. This it is quite technical, but look, you just need to be aware of what's on this page, and nothing sort of definitive. Fair Work have, the Ombudsman has a whole heap of things about information. Now, what you need to look at is COVID-19 vaccinations in the workplace, and it's got their workplace rights and obligations. That's one, and resolving workplace issues. If you have a look at workplace rights and obligations, there's a range of information there, including this one, refusing directions to be vaccinated, and it says a whole heap of things about what what happens if an employee refuses. Can the employer take disciplinary action. This is interesting. Read this. If an employee refuses a direction to be vaccinated, it's unlikely that their employer can stand down the employee. It goes on to say employers generally don't have the power to suspend employees without pay. It says that employees have various protections against being dismissed or treated adversely in their employment. Be aware that you have rights. Doesn't matter what mandates government puts in place. And again, you know, the Fair Work covers. I don't know that it does cover. Jack, am I right? Does it? It doesn't cover Queensland Health or Queensland Police Service or Education Queensland, does it?
That's right. No, yeah, they're governed by the Queensland Industrial Relations Act.
So this is private corporations. So people have asked me about, oh, what about the construction sector? What about this? What about that? Be aware you have rights. Now, at the end of the day, don't succumb to any pressure to quit. Don't succumb to anything like that. If they
That's a really important point. Do not resign. Yep. We've had a lot of people come across our phone line who have resigned, and there's almost nothing that we can do for those people. So do hold the line and stand firm, and make them take the first action if they're going to take the first action.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, mate. Do not resign. If you get sacked, then action can be taken. If you pull the pin yourself, well, nothing can be done. So this website, it's coronavirus.fairwork.gov.au. If you have a look, it's running across the bottom of the ticker tape. It's got a whole heap of information here, and ultimately they've got a hotline that you can contact if you want to get some other information. They're probably swamped at the moment, but I'll stop sharing that screen. And yeah. Mate, anything else that the people I've got on need to know or should know?
Yeah, well, just in Queensland, we've recently brought in the Queensland Human Rights Act, and in that Queensland Human Rights Act, there is a prohibition on subjecting people to medical experiments. I think Greg Hunt's even said on the news that this is the largest vaccine trial ever conducted. It's still the case that the vaccines or the jabs are provisionally approved, and they still have further testing that needs to happen. So even the government's own website says it's still in the experimental phase. I think there's going to be some real human rights challenges there as well that the government in Queensland will have to grapple with.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I know that there is so much more that I wish that I could do, but I really am restricted by the boundaries in which I can operate. There are a lot of people that have written to me, Jack, who are online, 4,500 people at the moment, across various different Facebook and YouTube platforms. I'm going to try to get back to some of them. I thought, this is how big of an issue this is, mate. I thought that I'd throw something up on Facebook. I've got a report form on my page. I thought I might get a few dozen emails back. Well, over 1,000 emails later, I decided I better take it down because I'm just getting swamped and I can't get back to everyone. So I've set this live stream up so that people would know at least some of the facts of what they can do, and hopefully this has helped educate some people. Hopefully it's given people a little bit of confidence that there's legal cases in the offing, that there's unions that are out there that they can join right now that are fighting for them. So please, people, take advantage of what's before you. Do not resign. Get yourself informed through what Fair Work has said. Get yourself aligned with a union that's going to stick up for your rights at work and your rights not to be vaccinated if you don't want to be. This is not an anti-vax thing. This is about freedom, and it's about choice, And it's about saying to both governments and corporations, you know what, we might be your employee, but we're not your chattel. We're no longer in a slave relationship where you can demand that certain things be done with my body. That's ridiculous. That's a sort of a view from yesteryear. And the whole rationale for mandating the jab in the workplace, it's not there. The whole rationale for all the coercion and the mandating and the no jab, no shop rules and all the rest of it, the vaccine discrimination or medical apartheid that certain politicians are proposing, it's not borne out by the facts. I mean, we know from empirical evidence now, and from what we're seeing in other countries, that the vaccines are less effective against Delta than what we thought they were going to be, and particularly less effective in reducing transmission. So if you can still transmit the virus, which you can if you're vaccinated, why are we segregating people? Why are we putting people into two different tribes and saying, this lot, the unvaxxed, we're going to treat you like lepers, where you're going to lose your job, you can't get a job, you can't go shopping, you can't do this, you can't go to a sporting game. But that's a recipe for disaster. So the sooner we get out of that, the better. And that's what I'm going to be fighting from here until it's over, or until I end my time in Parliament, one of the two, mate. So thanks very much for your time, Jack. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for the work you're doing, George. You seem to be, unfortunately, a bit of a lonely voice in Parliament on this issue, and I fear for what the next Parliament will look like, and I think it's going to be a lesser Parliament without you.
Thank you very much. You're so kind, mate. All right. Well, look, thank you again, everyone, for joining in on this live stream. The video will be up for people to see after the fact, so come in and have a look, and you might be able to go through and let a bit of the info sink in, go back and listen to some of the websites that we've said that you need to go and check out. All right. Thanks very much again, Jack, for all you're doing at Red Union. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this live stream. Cheers.
Thank you.